Your writing might be perfect, but that's not good enough. Your prose is prestigious, your sentences sensational, your dialogue delectable, your descriptions dependable, your narrative nurtured. The reader may not throw it down immediately in disgust, but your novel will be quickly forgotten, overshadowed by other works, by writers who've mastered this essential component. That's because even if you nail all that is necessary for good writing, your novel could still be missing something very important. And I'm going to break down this idea using a hand plane, as like a metaphor, not as like a club. Although it is pretty heavy. This is a hand plane. If you refer to it as a hand planer, I want you to stop watching this video and go reconsider every decision you've made in your entire life, as a great deal of them were probably wrong. Before the widespread availability of furniture made out of glue and sawdust, this tool was the primary means of smoothing and shaping wood. There's a great deal that goes into making one of these things work well. In fact, if you've ever tried to use one that wasn't tuned up, you probably left the experience wondering why there's a wooden knob attached to a boat anchor. There are a lot of things that I can do to make this hand plane perform better. I can sharpen the cutting iron, I can smooth and flatten the sole, I can adjust the tension and position of the cap iron, I can set the cutting depth, I can lubricate all of the mechanisms. All of this effort affects the interface of the tool so that when I go to use it, I have a better experience. You can do the same thing with your writing. You can use more interesting verbs, you can vary the sentence structure, use more clear and precise language, control the pacing and tension of your scenes. All those things affect the interface of your writing so that when the reader reads it, they have a better experience. Your writing serves as the bridge between your story and the reader. It's how your ideas will enter their mind. The quality of your writing affects how well those ideas get in there. Your writing is the interface between your story and the reader. Now, this is not a particularly good hand plane. It's a Mohawk Shelburne, I think, which is an off-brand Miller Falls. I'm pretty sure this one was sold through Simpson Sears because it's got the god-awful red plasticky veneer on the tote and knob, which I've seen on other tools sold through them. Anyways, this is not a very good hand plane. This is a much better hand plane. It is a Stanley Bailey number 4, the design of hand planes which all other hand planes have been based on since the 1800s. This is a much higher quality tool, but it's still not that great of a hand plane. This is a Type 20, meaning that it was built between 1960 and 1970s. It's got a bunch of weird cost-cutting measures. It's blue instead of black. The handles aren't made out of rosewood. The adjuster thingy is this 2-piece stamped steel thing, so the blade adjustment wobbles weirdly. Anyway, this is a better, but still not great hand plane. This is a much better hand plane. It's also a Stanley Bailey, but it's a number 3 instead of a number 4, so it's a little bit smaller. That doesn't necessarily make it better, it just makes it different. I think it's a Type 14 or Type 15. It might be World War II vintage, because I don't think the handles are actually rosewood, and it's got the weirder, thicker casting that the World War II vintage planes have. Anyways, of these 3 planes, this one is probably the best. If you think that you get weird looks because you're a writer, you've obviously never been into hand planes. Before this digression becomes a full-fledged tangent, allow me to conclude this metaphor. I can apply the same sort of external treatment to all 3 of these, and I will come up with 3 tools of different quality. I can improve the interface of each of these in the same way, but some of them will be better than others because they are inherently better tools. There are internal differences, there are design differences that make some of these inherently better than others. At the same time, a lackluster preparation of one of the Stanleys will make the Mohawk Shelburne perform way better. A higher quality plane will be outdone by a lower quality one that has a superior interface, one that's been prepared better. Your writing is the interface to your story. The clarity, flow, pacing, structure, and feel of your prose determines how well other aspects of your story get across to the reader. You can have the most engaging narrative, the most heart-wrenching plot, but if the writing that delivers it, the writing that interfaces with the reader, if that writing is subpar, then it won't matter. Alternatively, you can have excellent prose, but if the underlying themes, the message, the meaning of your story is absent or poorly thought out, then likewise you'll have an inferior product. even though you've got a great interface. These are the kinds of books that people finish and forget. They have no lasting impact. They aren't necessarily unpleasant to read, but after the story, the reader just sorts of shrugs and moves on. If this book is part of a series, they'll often complete the first book, but not bother going on to the second book. So what makes up these internal elements of the story? How do you craft something high quality so that all of your effort on the interface is not wasted? That's a really loaded question, and I can't possibly explain it all in one video, but here goes. The first thing I think you need is coherency. This could be through theme or some other way that the story feels like a whole. Sometimes you'll read a story that's just like a weird mishmash of ideas. All the parts themselves might be interesting, it might be well written, but they don't connect in any way. They don't gel together. These are the kinds of stories that lack this deeper meaning. They don't have that thematic layer. They don't have that additional detail, that additional coherency. Holes by Louis Sachar is one example that leaps to mind as a story that has excellent coherency. Everything, and I mean practically everything in that story is tied together in some way. When one element gets pushed on, another one springs out. There's this coherency, there's this interconnectedness to the narrative that goes beyond just the story itself. Beyond that, Holes is incredibly well written, which makes it have a very pleasant interface, which makes it easier for the reader to experience the depth and nuance and complexity and themes and everything that makes that story great. One of my favorite books of all time is East of Eden by John Steinbeck. Fantastic book. I loved reading it. I have been itching to read it again, but I don't see it getting quite as much praise as I think it deserves, and I think part of this is because it lacks some of this coherency. I struggle to tell people what that book is about in less than 30 minutes, not just because I'm obsessed with it, but because it has so much going on. There's some memoir elements to it. It's got like one psychopathic character and some side plots that could be considered horror. There's also a bit of kind of true crime stuff in it. There's a bunch of Christian Judeo themes in it. There's a whole bunch of cultural stuff in the early 20th century of the Western United States. It's got a lot going on. In my opinion, it's a better book than Grapes of Wrath or Of Mice and Men, but it doesn't get mentioned nearly as often as those other works by Steinbeck, and I think part of that is because there's this fundamental lack of coherency to the story. There is a plot, it comes together, the elements do intertwine, but not in the sort of breathtaking way that a book like Holes does. East of Eden also has a better ending than Of Mice and Men. Poor Lenny. Oh, spoilers, sorry. So what can we take away from all this? Well, don't waste your money on the Stanley Bedrock series of planes. They're just heavier for no reason, and them having less chatter is just a myth. You're spending extra money you don't need if you give into the Bedrock hype, and your arms will get extra tired from pushing around an extra pound of overpriced cast iron all the time. Oh, there's a fully machined mating surface between the frog and the main body of the plane, and the cutting iron is 3/64 of an inch thicker. Who cares? You're probably looking for writing takeaways. I think both of these areas of the story need your focus. You need to ensure that you have the best interface possible for your story, but you need to make sure you have something to back it up. You need something beyond just good writing. You need something beyond just relating the events in a clear, concise, and emotionally evocative way. Writing is not just about relating events on the page. Your story needs to stretch beyond that. These ideas and mechanisms and the way that different things fit together will create this sense of awe in your reader. It will leave them wanting more. If you truly want to write impactful fiction, you have to go beyond just writing good fiction. Your writing is important, your prose is incredibly important, but you need to go further than that. It's not just enough to nail the plot beats and nail your descriptions and that sort of thing. You have to go a little bit further. I would love to be able to provide you more information on how to do that, but I think it's something you have to discover yourself for the story that you're writing. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video and found the advice in it useful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.